And I think we will start with Amy McGarrigle and Gary Milne at the screen. So Gary is an assistant producer on the BBC Archive, Content and Partnership. And after previously having worked in the archives at STV, he has worked on archive-led short-form videos across the BBC site for news, sport, and BBC Ideas, and currently he helps curate content for the BBC Archive's successful social media feeds. He will be presenting together with Amy, who's an award-winning producer and has experience across digital and radio output for the BBC. She currently leads the team that have grown the huge and popular BBC's Archive social channels. And that's what their presentation will be about. It's called Audience, Algorithm and Archives, the challenges of curating the BBC's Archives social channels.
Yes, my name is Amy McGarrigle. I'm a producer with the BBC Archive Social. Gary will hopefully be joining me in a minute. But we will give you a fairly kind of top overview of what goes on with the BBC Archive social accounts. I know we talk about kind of a basic understanding of what we've gathered from our audiences and algorithms of the different platforms. So I guess first off, I'm sorry we can't be there, but hopefully we can still get across the main points. So we are the editorial wing of the BBC Archive. So we do all the fun stuff for the archive, to be honest, whereas all our colleagues, archivist colleagues, are doing the hard work. We get to just decide what to put out there. And our social channels were kind of started as a way to surface content that really wasn't getting to see the light of day again. And there was a good license fee reason for doing that and letting people see it. Our team has grown over the years. It's myself now, 2 assistant producers and 2 researchers across numerous platforms. So I'm going to play a little video for you, just to give you a little feel of some of the stuff we put out on the channel. Pause it there. This is the trailer for our relatively new YouTube channel, and if anybody is there who has their mobile phone wants to subscribe to our channels, of course, please do that now. But you can get a little bit of a flavor of the kind of varied material that has been going out on our channels over the last number of years. We took on the Twitter account in 2015 originally, and it was quite small. So we've grown that up to nearly 300,000. But Facebook is by far our biggest account at over 2 million followers. Instagram, we started to kind of reach younger audiences, but it's still growing fairly slowly. We're just about to hit 100,000 there. And then more recently, YouTube, we started December last year. So we're almost on that a year, and it seems to be a really good platform for us. I think we can have a lot of joy with that. With regards to the landscape over the last number of years, things have definitely changed. When we first started, we were mostly just doing kind of vertical little bits of video on Facebook and Twitter. We were posting up to 5 a day, but the whole landscape of social media has changed since we began. So there's a lot more competition, I guess, for our resources in a way. So you have Facebook and Twitter still, but there's also Facebook short form vertical now as well. You have Instagram Reels, which is vertical short form video. We have YouTube, which also has YouTube Shorts, which is vertical video. There's always the question mark of whether we should be on TikTok. We're not currently. And that has driven more competition or more decisions as to where our resources go as the landscape of social media just kind of keeps expanding. Some of the stuff that has performed pretty well for us over the years has been pretty varied. We have always done things a lot of the stuff this is how we've decided to do our editorial content has been things like on this days, which have led us to be able to really surface some unusual stuff that you would never know to find, you'd never know to go and search. So that has allowed us to kind of surface some more interesting things, obits and births obviously as well. But some of the kind of contents, we kind of have a fair idea of the categories that work for us. Future predictions, early tech always seems to work. So one of the videos there, Tomorrow's World 2020, was literally people predicting what the home would look like in 2020. So it kind of looked forward to home automation, which really struck a chord with people, that idea of seeing how things panned out when we put it up in 2020. You have things as well, like Fred Dibna there in the top right. He was he just took down steeplejack. He used to take down towers, but he done a documentary for the BBC where he was taking that big tower down, and people just seem to love it. They love, I think it's the jeopardy that he puts himself under, because there's very little health and safety. Or lockdown fitness, Tony Britz, this guy in the middle left there, we put him live at the start of lockdown when, you know, everything was not great and it was a bit, everybody needed a bit of a cheering up. So we put out a series of those videos because it was all about lockdown health as well and doing those classes at home. So that fitted in pretty well and that done well. So that's just a little bit of an example of the kind of varied bits of content. This is by no means totally scientific, but this is what we kind of generally gather from the platforms. Instagram generally is light and feel good. That's what kind of content performs best on that platform for us. People like the beautiful imagery. So I know there was like even things, it doesn't necessarily always have to be celebrities, but celebrities definitely do well. There was like a big biscuit factory and it was just really beautiful footage that done quite well on Instagram. You have Twitter, and people on Twitter are a lot more up for debate, and they like a bit of conflict. So anything that tends to have two sides, that will do well on Twitter. It also can really take on heavier topics better than any other platforms. So we've had stuff like Frank Prentice, the Titanic survivor, or we've had German World War I veteran as well. Very serious stuff does do quite well on Twitter, which is probably not surprising because a lot of the audience, you know, it's quite a news-focused platform as well. And the big bonus for us on Twitter is that ability to have direct contact with people and the celebrity retweets, which I'll mention later on. Facebook is our most universal platform. So as I said before, it is our biggest platform by far. It's over 2 million followers. Which kind of means it's almost harder to predict what will do well because nearly anything can kind of do well on that platform. I remember one time somebody wanted to put up a video about a pneumatic drill, which I thought wouldn't do very well. And it turns out Facebook loved it. So it's a little bit unpredictable in that sense. But a thing that obviously does quite well there is children and childhood nostalgia. So yeah, that does perform on Facebook, and it's quite a global account as well with regard to reach. YouTube, which has been going less than a year, we have found that we have two main outputs on YouTube. We have the main feed, which is fairly untouched archive in its original format, and then we have the YouTube Shorts, which is a vertical short form video. And when we first started the account, we were advised to take all the celebrities we could possibly find in the archive and put them up there. What we have found after nearly a year of running the account is they have not performed particularly well on our main feed, and actually social history, retro tech, and those kind of Fred Dibna moments, those look back when health and safety barely existed, perform quite well on the YouTube main feed. However, the celebrities have found a home in YouTube Shorts, and that's where they're performing. So that vertical short form video, well-known faces, performs really well there. So it's just a really kind of rough breakdown as to what we find each platform is particularly good for. I'm going to play a little clip for this video. This is one of the videos that done well for us, and it's one that we've repeatedly put up, which you can see on the left-hand side there, with 2021 really hitting the mark. I'll just play a little clip. to just give you a little flavor. But yeah, so that was a toddler who was identifying classical music composers. We put it up in 2018, 2019, 2020. And then 2021 had done 20 million views. The big thing we changed in 2021 was subtitle, and that's a big part, a big change in our output. We're having to really put a bit more effort in to be accessible and make sure that we are subtitling virtually everything now, which obviously takes more effort on our resources, but is very worthwhile for numerous reasons. The other thing is that we're able now, having started the accounts quite a while ago, we have a good bank of stuff that we know has done quite well that people will be interested in. And now we're going back and cherry picking the best parts and rejigging them for the platforms today, whether it's making it vertical or subtitling. So it's been really useful that we have that back catalogue, but there's always a new challenge. So now it's getting them into the right format that it needs to be today. But it just goes to show that you can post material time and again and see if it will perform. And it's done pretty decently most years, but in 2021 done particularly well. I mentioned this, but the big bonus of Twitter for us is that direct contact with the people featured or different. So for instance, PlayStation retweeted a piece about the launch of the PlayStation 1. You had Ian McKellen talking about Section 28, and he was able to retweet it himself. The same with Toya Wilcox retweeting something from herself. Or you have the family connection as well, or Dermot Morgan, who was Father Ted. He featured in this piece about Dublin, and his son picked up the piece, or just journalists like Jeremy Vine. So Twitter, while not our biggest account, certainly has its pluses. Instagram has really changed for us over the last year. So Meta has really changed the platform, is really trying to change the platform from an image-first platform to a video-based platform. So it's had some pushback on it, but it does seem to be that this is going to be the way. So you can see on the left-hand side was July 2021, which was all photos. And you can see July 2022, where we've done virtually, I think it's all videos that time. We still do post photos, but very heavily video focused now. They're also pushing Reels, which is vertical video. So we were originally putting square video up on Instagram. Now it's vertical, and we're subtitling everything. Our reach has gone up over 170% year on year. So there's, there is potential that this will help grow the account. But it does mean we have one less output almost for amazing photo library as well, if we go heavy down that route. But Instagram's an interesting platform for us. It doesn't have, like Facebook and YouTube has a real evergreen ability to it, even like Facebook, which you wouldn't necessarily think we have seen videos do well months and months later. Whereas Instagram, once you post it, you've got a day, and then it seems to be more or less done for us. So it really needs to get on the Explore tab, which is the algorithm mystery. But also collaborations are massively important now, we find on Instagram. So you can get 2 accounts to appear on a post, and we've been using that facility with other BBC accounts, and we need to expand that even further, because that seems to be the best way to expand our Instagram audience. I'm talking about audiences. So obviously, being an archive account, we are posting stuff from the 60s, 70s, 80s, a lot mostly. And there's going to be certain people who have lived experiences of those eras who have nostalgia. So when we first started the account, it did seem to be a slightly older audience, which wasn't a huge surprise. But what's been really nice is we have seen a shift younger, like over the last 14 days or so, just having had a look before we came on. Our biggest age group is 25 to 34. I do wonder whether some of that is a shift to vertical video and efforts as well. But the older generation have their own kind of stories entwined with this archive. They have nostalgia for it, and their viewpoints and experiences are kind of all entwined with that archive we put up. And you can see that from the comments. But there's an intrigue there for people who didn't necessarily live it. So, when we talk about 25 to 34-year-olds, if we're posting mostly 80s back, they don't have a lived experience of that, but they are still enjoying that content. The stuff that does tend to do quite well are things like early tech. So they obviously have a reference for what it is today, and they can go and see the very early burgeoning of that idea, or things that just seem so foreign now, so bizarre that it was ever that way. that I think is just really intriguing for that younger audience. We do have a bit of a gender issue with, we need to really improve, because we have on our, most of our output is quite male heavy if you look at the analytics. So we're having to make a bit more of an effort to try and figure out what more women would like to see. We have had certain videos that perform very well with women, but it is more about that day-to-day, getting that audience shifted. And diversity is an issue where we have, obviously, this is all archive from Britain in the past, so it was less diverse, and also the cameras weren't necessarily going into those areas or really reporting on the big programs. So it takes a little bit more effort to go in there and dig, and obviously that will affect our audiences as well. So one example here of the kind of vertical video is Sylvester Stallone talking about Rocky. You can see on the top, this is both on YouTube, you can see on the top, that was a vertical short, which is only about a minute. And then you can see in the bottom, which is our longer 13-minute video, untouched archive really. And they kind of are reaching different audiences. The shorts, while I'm not saying this is a scientific study, they do seem to be reaching a younger audience for us, which is brilliant. And the more traditional horizontal 16:9 video, it was reaching slightly an older audience, so 45 to 54. So you can see how changing your format can change your audience from what we can see so far. And it has kind of instilled the importance, I think, for us to continue to experiment with vertical video and see what we can do with it. That's not to say everyone's going to be very happy about doing vertical video and messing with the archive. And I'm sure a lot of people who are watching right now or who are in the audience probably aren't very happy with people always chopping up and manipulating the archive. But we feel like we can do it both ways. So we do square in other platforms. We make it vertical now in certain platforms. We burn in subtitles for accessibility, and that's all obviously not being very true to the archives. However, we do have the YouTube main feed now where we're putting things up unsubtitled so that people would only use the kind of automated subtitles from YouTube. But there's nothing burnt in, and it's the original format, and it's quite pure. So I think we have kind of something for everyone. So I'll just play a little clip of this Star Wars one to just kind of show you, at least with the vertical, you can just kind of get to that real pinnacle of an interview very quickly, and people do seem to like that. So yeah, we have a much longer form video of that, but that is a nice way to just be able to show people that moment. They talk about the movie titles wrong, and they talk about something that wasn't going to happen for another 20 years or whatever to be filmed. So yeah, I think there's real possibilities with that vertical short form, but it takes another effort on your team to do that.
Will you be making any more?
Oh, that brings us to new challenges, and there certainly are those. So as I said before, we used to post 5 videos a day. We're now down to 2 because we have a small team, and we really need to try and think of priorities. Accessibility has been an issue for us. We weren't subtitling for a long time, and that really wasn't good enough. So we've now changed that, where we are subtitling our videos. The platform changes, which I've mentioned, the kind of focus, the pull away from photos to video, and the pull away to vertical short form video, means that we are reversioning things to Square, then subtitling, then there needs to be a vertical version for a different platform, and then we want to have the nice clean purist version on YouTube, and that all takes effort. Societal changes as well. The world has changed in the last couple of years. There's sensitivities there we have to have. One of, for instance, is the animal rights thing is definitely more vocal now on social. So there were things we posted before, like there was a donkey who used to take milk churns and was trained to go up to the hill, leave off the milk churns, come back itself. And then the last time we posted that, We had posted a time in it before and there was no problem. And the last time we posted it, there was a lot of complaints about it being cruel. And the same with, there was Nelly the elephant, the Blue Peter elephant, who was shackled in the studio, had been up previously, but now people are much more sensitive to that and have commented about that. So there's lots of different changes like that that we need to be aware of. The lack of diversity I talked about before, we're having to make a much more concerted effort to go in and find those programs that are a bit more reflective of the whole of Britain. And that can be a challenge because you have some community programming, but a lot of the time the cameras didn't go into those communities, certainly not the big programs. So we're having to go in and make more efforts as we're trying to make sure that we're being as inclusive as possible. And also, and that's across the board really, you know, and talk shows always mostly white middle class men that sat there, and that has changed over time. So it's how we do that when we can only use the existing archive. And that all those things challenge for our staffing and our time. Moderation is another thing worth just mentioning because we physically couldn't read every message that gets put on our content. So we do have a moderation team, we're lucky in the BBC, and they help us with our filters. And then if there's a piece of content we know is going to be contentious, we can let them know it's going to be there, and they can give us 24-hour support for any post that we think is really difficult. Piracy is another big issue, which I imagine is no stranger to anybody else at this conference. We've been putting stuff up and then it appears everywhere else. So once you put it up, it almost feels like that's gone into the ether and it's hard to call it back. So we've seen our stuff put on various platforms, and even though we make sure the BBC blocks are on it these days, people will crop it out. So there is a big debate as to whether we should even be on these platforms at all. So, you know, there's bonuses with that because you're getting to meet and getting to speak directly to audiences that maybe wouldn't be on their other BBC channels, and that's important. The license fee feel like payers are getting something back, and to reach younger audiences. But the downside of that is, what is the implications for our IP in the future, any possible commercialization? So it's not, we have been considering this and we continue to consider this. It's a decision that we've made to be on these platforms, but it is a big question. We don't ask individuals to take down the platforms, any videos at the moment, but there are ongoing discussions about how we approach that. It's easier for people who are uploading full series because you can do content ID, which is the AI kind of background checks. But when we're taking like a tiny bit of one program and from one year and another thing from across the archive, it's a bit harder to do that. And yeah, I just want to thank you for listening. We've been doing it for 7 years. I think we've learned a lot. I hope you have been able to gain some insights from this. I think we have now got a place in the audience's minds. I think they would really miss it if it wasn't there anymore. I think there's a lot of value from it. We're one of the top 10 BBC accounts. So yeah, I think it's been good, and I think it's, you know, provides a warmth to the BBC in a time when nothing is really universally loved anymore. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. That was great. Are there questions to Amy about?
Hi, good afternoon. I have two questions actually. One is, so you, and first off, thanks for your talk. I took a lot of pictures and lots of things to think about. One question is, so you talked about 4 platforms, but obviously younger people, they tend to be on TikTok and Snapchat. So I was wondering what the editorial decision is to be on the platform, yes or no? And that leads me to the second question. You mentioned in the very end there that there was a debate on whether the BBC should be on these platforms at all. So I was curious if you can maybe elaborate a little bit on the discussions that you're having internally.
Sure. So the first question around TikTok and Snapchat, yeah, we're very aware that these are the platforms where accounts, it feels like we should be there. However, it's a lot of the time it's down to staffing. We only have so much resources, and it feels like if you're going to be on TikTok, particularly, you need to do it right. And we at this point wouldn't have the staffing to be able to do bespoke content for TikTok. There are other channels in the BBC on TikTok. So there's BBC Master Brand are on there. And I think there's a couple of the other more youth branded accounts that are on there. I think there's food for thought because there's quite a lot of our content is ending up on TikTok anyway. So it does go to show that there actually is a bit of an appetite for archive on TikTok, but it's certainly not something that we have taken any further at this point. That doesn't mean we won't, but certainly at this point, we just don't have the resources. And we are reaching younger people on some of the other platforms, which has been nice over the last while. With regards to the kind of bigger debate, whether we should be on these social accounts in the first place, that way back in 2015, 16, whenever we started, I mean, that was the debate as to whether we should be giving up our IP basically and making, I guess, third party money off the back of it rather than the BBC. But you know, it's changed a lot from those days. And we now, you know, I think if you're not on those platforms, it's almost hard to justify to not be on those platforms now. That's where a lot of the audience is, and they expect it. It's like it's a channel that you're expected to be on. So I think the bigger debate now is how we deal with our IP on it. And yeah, there are certain discussions happening, I guess, around that idea of attribution and keeping our IP while being on these platforms. I hope that answers the question. Sorry, I don't want to waffle too long.
Thank you. I think we have time for one short final question here.
Thank you, Amy. I was just wondering, are there any plans to monetize this in some way?
Well, yeah, I think monetization is obviously the big question of the day. With BBC Archive, it is a public service account, obviously, and people have paid that from the license fee. So I think there's some difficulties with regards to potentially commercializing within the UK because people have paid for it. Whether we go forward to look at commercializing more internationally is kind of an open question. And I certainly wouldn't say we'll never do it in the future, but it's certainly not on the immediate cards, if that's a quick answer. But obviously, if we can take money back into public service, that would be a bonus as well.